Welcome to our online community here at Metro Life Church. We're so glad to have you with us today. I am coming to announce that we are celebrating our Christmas service this morning. We're doing worship and communion here in the house, and we're not able to live stream that service because of the music, the recorded music that we're using for our worship set. YouTube flags that as copyrighted, and so they would kill the live stream. So therefore, we are not going to be live streaming the service today. So my apologies to you for that. Thank you for being flexible. But I do want to share a couple of things as it relates to the birth of Jesus, and as we look this time of year to celebrate at Christmas the good, perfect gift. Every good and perfect gift, Paul says, comes down from the Father of lights, in whom there is no inconsistency, and he does not change. You can count on him. And why that is so important is because there are some powerful things that we see at the Christmas season when we take a fresh look at the birth of Jesus. And I've been doing that lately, and just some things that the Lord's really just been highlighting to me. I want to share them with you on a real quick video in lieu of our live stream today. So I want to build that around 8 things that are impressive to me, that stand out, that we can take any time of year to use to supplement our faith, but especially this time of year at Christmas. 8 things about the Christmas story, as it were, or the Gospels of Matthew chapter 2 and Luke chapter 2 that talk about the birth of Jesus, those events that surround him. I want to share them with you real quick. The first is the faithfulness of Joseph. I want you to consider all of the men that were existent from the tribe of Judah, the lineage of David, that God could have chosen. He chose Joseph. Matthew chapter 1 tells the dilemma that he was in when he finds out that his fiancée is pregnant, and he knows he's not the father. And the Bible says that he was an equitable man. It meant he was fair and just. And no doubt until the angel Gabriel appears to him and says, "Oh, wait a minute, don't put her away. What's born in her is the Son of God." She didn't cheat on you, Joseph. The power of God came upon her. And I want you to think about how Joseph had to, as a man who'd waited all his life to get married. He's an older man, and so he's been waiting to get married, and now he's got to wrap his mind around this experience and be willing to roll with that. The faithfulness of Joseph. You see, God doesn't choose us because of our perfection. He chooses us because he looks into our hearts. He's chosen you. Even though things may not be perfect with you, or you may not bat 1,000 to get it right all the time, yet God knows what's in your heart, and he's chosen you. The faithfulness of Joseph is an incredible factor in the Christmas story. The second factor that stands out to me is the maturity of Mary. Mary is a teenage girl, and yet out of all of the women in Israel, out of all of the virgins God could have chosen, he chooses her. You see, I want to bring this back. It's very similar to what he does with Joseph. God knows what's in you. Never allow the enemy to use your circumstances to lie to you, to disqualify you. Mary and Joseph, both in the individuality of what they represent and what God saw in them, is powerful for us to think about. If you're in faith in Jesus, do you know what that means? That means he's chosen you. Maybe you're not in faith in Jesus and you're catching this, and at this Christmas season, you're seriously contemplating, what does it mean to have a relationship with Jesus Christ? What does that mean? That means that he's knocking at the door of your heart. He's chosen you. That stirring, that pulling, that tugging of the heart is an indication that the Lord knows you, and he loves you, and he yearns to have a relationship with you. And so there's a choosing element. You've been chosen by the God of heaven to share his love and his good news with you. So think about the maturity of Mary. Mary has a way of keeping secrets. I'm talking to people right now, you carry things in your heart that are secret, in the sense that God's put some things in you, and maybe they haven't come to pass yet, or maybe they just sound so out there because they're so big that you have to ponder them in your heart. God could trust Mary with Jesus. God could trust Joseph with Jesus. There are things he's trusted you with. At this Christmas season, I want you to think about that and let that encourage your heart, and then let the Holy Spirit deal with your heart about that. The third thing that I find impressive is the faithfulness and the presence, the importance really, of the shepherds. Out of all of the people the angels could have came to, God sent them to the shepherds. You see, the shepherds are important. You're important. What the Christmas story tells us is that everyone is important to God. And the shepherds in that culture were kind of outcasts. There wasn't an important job in terms of how culture looked at them. Yet God said, I value them. I value them so much. They're the people that I'm going to send the angel to tell the good news about what I'm doing in that manger. And so it's important at the Christmas story to realize that or at the Christmas season when we're reflecting on the birth of Jesus, to remember and realize you're highly valued. And no matter where you are in life or maybe some of the scenarios you're dealing with, God has set great value on your life. So take courage from that. The fourth thing that I find impressive is the expectation of the wise men, or the Magi, really, that had come from Parthia, which is a part of Persia. They were descendants of a school that the prophet Daniel, hundreds of years before, had developed and had schooled them in the wisdom, the prophetic wisdom of the prophecies of God from the Old Testament and God's law and the old covenant as Daniel understood it and had it in writing during his time. And so he actually built a school and taught them. So these are very important, powerful men who for centuries had passed down not just a tradition, but an expectation. And they persevered in their expectation, and they were looking so that's how they were able to recognize the star when it came. You see, I'm talking to people today that there is expectation in you for God to do something, and you've had to maybe persevere and maintain that expectation. And at the Christmas season, it's important to remember that God uses the Magi to teach us, those who seek me will find me. And the expectation that's in you, maybe you've had to persevere through some delays, changes of seasons, some transitions even. That expectation is important. It's an indication that God is still working on your behalf, and what there's an expectation in you to believe for, you're going to see it come to pass. The fifth thing that I find impressive is the passion of God for people. 3 decades later, Jesus is going to have a conversation one night with a Jewish scholar, and he's going to say, for God so loved the world that he sent his only son. This is that baby lying in the manger that the Magi started to come to see. While he's in the manger, they saw his star. While the shepherds are seeing the angel in the sky and seeing the glory of God shining around them, and they move into that cave to find the Christ child. You see, the passion of God is for you. The passion of God is for people. It's important at this Christmas season to be renewed in our hope and our knowledge of the fact that God passionately cares for you. The sixth thing that impresses me is the timing of God. In Galatians chapter 4, verse 4, the Apostle Paul writes, when the fullness of the time had come, God sent forth his Son. You see, God makes everything beautiful in its time. And at this season, at Christmas time, it's important to remember the role that the timing of God plays in how he performs his promises in our life, how things come to pass. Maybe you've had to persevere through some delays. What the delays cannot do is cancel the timing of God. God's got a timing to what he's doing in your life. So I want to encourage you to be reminded of that and be mindful of that at this season and as we move into a new year. The next thing that I find important and impressive is how God brings light out of darkness. It's interesting to me that in the beginning of creation, the Bible said the evening and the morning were the first day. Night came first, and it's out of night that God causes light to shine. So when Jesus is born, just like the original beginning in Genesis 1, now in the new beginning of the new covenant, when Jesus is born, he's not born in the day, he's born at night. And maybe you're in a night season in your own life where things look dark, obscure, uncertain. If you know anything about the time in which Jesus was born, the time in the earth, it's an obscure, dark time spiritually, politically. It had been 430 years since God had last prophesied through the prophet Malachi, and then he's silent. So there's spiritual darkness for over 400 years, and it's in the context of darkness that God shows up and releases his light. And so in the darkness of wherever you are, there's light that's going to emerge. I find that impressive in the Christmas story and important for us to remember at this time of year. The next thing that I find impressive, and I'm going to stop with this, is God knows how to orchestrate your steps to get you where you need to be. You see the process of him fulfilling his word in our lives, his promises, his purposes. Not only is there a timing, but there's an element of his orchestration that only God can order our steps. Consider this. When Jesus is born to fulfill an ancient prophecy that said in the prophet Micah, in Micah chapter 2, verse 4, it said he's going to be born in Bethlehem. Well, hundreds of years later, centuries down the road, there's a pagan emperor named Augustus. From the time Micah prophesied until the time Jesus is born and that prophecy comes to pass, there are not only centuries that pass, but there are empires that come and go, rise and fall. And yet God is so accurate, he orchestrated that a pagan king would have the idea to take a census that would require people to travel to their homelands. And you know the rest of the story. Jesus' earthly father and his mom are living in Nazareth. But the prophetic word was he would be born in Bethlehem. And so God stirred a pagan king with an idea to implement a census and to demand that to engage in that census, they had to go back to where their family line comes from. So for Joseph and Mary, that's Bethlehem. So though they're living in Nazareth, God orchestrated their steps through a unique way. God used an enemy to bless them, to get them to the place of prophetic fulfillment. Maybe things in your life look so crazy and so distant from the direction that God said he was going to work in your life. Trust the unique way that he can orchestrate your steps to get you to the place of fulfillment. So whether it's Joseph, Mary, the Magi, the shepherds, God's timing, his ways, his orchestration, him bringing light out of darkness, something out of nothing, greatness out of brokenness. At this season, I wanted to share this word with you today, not only to encourage you, but maybe you're struggling in your expectation. Let it be raised. Let hope rise. Let strength come. And may the joy of the Lord be yours this Christmas. And from everyone here at Metro Life Church in Largo, we love you. We are praying that your Christmas season will be a time of renewal in your spirit, your heart, your relationships with God and with others. And may you have a blessed Christmas day and a wonderful